Nonviolence. I would like to welcome you all to the panel discussion with young participants engaged in nonviolent actions on application of nonviolence in 2022 from a young person's perspective. From this panel discussion, we aim to explore and learn from the young people about their experiences and learnings from their own actions, lives, and journey of peace and nonviolence. I am Devesh Gupta, coordinator for the Youth Assembly, and I'll be the moderator for this panel discussion. Quick introduction to myself. I work with human beings of all ages by working on transformation of the psyche of the human being, where we focus on individual action, love, and consciousness change on the inside and outside to bring a change in the society. I worked with the Dais for 5 years, and as a youth, got an opportunity and the Dais literally to learn and share my learnings by being at Kabul, witnessing conflict, to seeing climate change at Fiji, and learning about myself and the world by living with and mentoring students all across the globe. 2 years ago, I started my own organization called Emerge, where we focus on individual change through right action and education. Moving ahead, this panel discussion is scheduled for 60 minutes, and we have 4 speakers from around the world spearheading and creating impact in their respective spaces. Some basic housekeeping essentials for everyone. Please keep your microphones at mute during all points unless recognized by the moderator to speak. If there is any question you have for the speaker, please send the question in writing on the chat and we can take it up. And please be respectful to each other and sensitive to everyone's opinion and experiences. Now, first of all, I would like to take the opportunity to invite Ms. Andrea Robles to introduce herself to everyone here. Ms. Andrea.
Hello, everyone. I would like to see how you're doing. So maybe if you want to make a reaction on the screen or send us a message, because we also want to hear all of you. So I'm Andrea Palomo-Robles. I am from Mexico. I'm a specialist in positive peace, and I have more than 10 years of experience in working with the social sector. And I'm 20 years old, so I started when I was very, very young. 28 years old, sorry. I have collaborated nationally and internationally with various peace leadership and human rights organizations. And I am the executive director of Satyagraha Institute. I will tell you more about this in a moment, where we train leaders in the traditions of nonviolence. I'm a political scientist, and I studied nonviolence at the Gujarat Vidyapith University, a university founded by Gandhi in India. I am a speaker and workshop facilitator on issues of conflict, nonviolence, and peace in the Americas and in Europe. I am a member of organizations that support youth development worldwide. And I am, of course, a member of the World House Global Network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. I would now like to request Mr. Nicholas Thompson to introduce himself to everyone. Nicholas, I think you're on mute.
Oops, sorry about that. Hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas Marcus Thompson, and I am a social justice advocate based in Toronto. I'm also a union leader and motivational speaker. And my journey is really towards the elimination of systemic discrimination and racism in Canada. I founded an organization called the Black Class Action Secretariat, which works to actively eliminate those barriers that the Black people face throughout Canadian society. And already I've seen how this work has impacted legislation, how it's impacted policy, and not only removing barriers for Black people, but also all underrepresented groups. I'm also, as I mentioned, a trade unionist, where I'm the president of a union that represents federal employees in the government of Canada. I have also held many different positions within the labor movement, advocating for a better community and a better country. So thank you for the opportunity to speak here before you, and I look forward to engaging with all of you.
Thank you, Nicholas, for being here with us. Now I would like to invite Mr. Jin Tanaka to introduce himself.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for the giving the opportunity to introduce. Hello, this is Jin Tanaka. I'm from Japan. As a 21 years old, I'm the branch manager of the UNESCO International, providing the human rights support in the Asia Pacific countries with collaborating with the UNHCR. And I'm so glad to be here to talking about any of the topics for the protections and also some violence and any of the types of the systems. So thanks so much. I'm so please best regards.
Thank you, Jin. Jin had been suffering from COVID, and even then he especially found time to join us. So I would really like to thank Jin for being here with us. Next, we have Mr. Simon Bayingana with us, and who would be introducing himself to everyone.
Thank you very much, Desh. My name is Simon Peter Bayingana. I come from Uganda, East Africa. I work with Solidarity Uganda, a social movement that trains corporations, grassroots organizations, unions in civil resistance, nonviolent action, and also movement building. I am also an alumni of the RISE Global Coaching Network of Fellowship Network. I was a coach and a mentor, basically doing work around movement building and also the movement mapping tool that we use to support the grassroots movements we are from. I'm also a member of Solidarity 2020 and Beyond, a global network of activists that is supported by Nonviolence International. And also I was part of a webinar that was organized by Nonviolence International, the book of the late Dr. Peter Ackman, The Checklist to End Tyranny. I am part of the World House Network, and I am also an organizing fellow with the Horizons project that is trying to find an intersection between civil resistance and peace building work. Thank you, and happy to be part of this call and network.
Thank you, Simon, so much for being here with us. Now, moving on from here, first, I would like to open the floor for the panel discussion with a common leading question. And we would like to first invite Mr. Jin Tanaka for the same. Jin, could you elaborate on your personal journey towards nonviolence? And could you tell us about the turning point in your life, which has put you on the path of peace and harmony?
Okay, thanks so much. Based on my experience in my journeys, I traveled to the many countries and the many joined to the supporting the many opportunities and events for in the Asia Pacific countries for the improvement to the human rights. And that time, I think we need to get some more inclusive. Requires the most of the youth as facing in danger for the taking the education opportunities, and some of the workers as facing some of the dangers of some of the working violence. And also now recently, the government deciding to the shifting to the more development or high class management and support and levels, but most of the Asian countries and Asia Pacific countries, it did not strongly focus on about the protection of the rights of the laborers and working rights and so on. So that's why based on the youth activities, we need to deliver to the voice of the youth for the considerations about the future engagement, future career plans for their future working place, and also the focus on into the work-life balance as well. So that's the brief point of based on my experience.
Thank you, Jin. Now, next, we have the same question, and we would now like to invite Mr. Simon Bayangana for the same.
Thank you very much. I think my leadership or my journey in civil resistance roots back from when I was a kid. Recently, I've been attending a course on public narrative by Marshall Gandhi, and I was trying to realize where my call comes from. Why do I care? Why do I do what I'm doing for the community? Why am I an activist? But I realized that it all roots from the time as in college, when as a student and as a student leader, trying to run campaigns that organizing around university campaigns that would really help us to have a student-led kind of group that was advocating for their rights. After all, I joined Solidarity Uganda as a central coordinator. At the time I joined, they had organized a land rights campaign that had brought grassroots networks together that were struggling with their land to do an occupation, which was like a very kind of powerful method of non-violence. And when people occupied the UN premises for 37 days, they were able to reclaim their land back because of the amount of pressure they kind of put on government. This gave me, like, this was a turning point for me because I saw it powerful. I saw the state trembling to see that people can achieve what they want. I saw it in a way that it was organized, that people were able to actually come together and work together in order to achieve a common kind of purpose and good. So in a sense, this was like a very big turning point in my life. And up to now, I feel like this is my passion, this is my call to action, and this is where I am meant to be because it inspires me each and every day. That's why all efforts that lead to change, that lead to social change, that advocates for non-violence, I always take them with first priority because of the passion that I share with them. Yeah, so that's my journey, and that's my turning point. A lot has happened. I can't say all here, but for me, seeing people rise up, grassroots movements rise up and making it happen so that their demand is fulfilled was a turning point in my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon, for sharing and for inspiring us. We'd now like to invite Miss Andrea Robles to answer the same question.
Thank you. I struggled to find only one turning point because I think I have had several ones that took me to different things. So I will tell the story. I want to start when I was 16 years old. I'm a scout, like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. And I was taking part in local initiatives for youth involvement. And by doing this, I learned that I wanted to do something for my community. So this is the first, I think, turning point. I hear some background noise. Sorry. Then this continued, and I took part then in a model of the United Nations in my city. And this was very inspiring and very powerful for me. Here I met an international organization working for human rights, and I loved their work, which inspired me to do more for the world. So this is the second part, not only for my community, but now I wanted to do more for the world. And as 17 years old, I founded the activist group of this organization in my state, which brought many more opportunities with the help of social media. And I took part in groups and projects that were supporting my community development and leadership. And then through the network that I was building with this work, I received an invitation to join a program called Messengers of Peace. It's also a scout program, which meant I would support young leaders in my community and nationally to create community-based projects, combining their passions and their talents with their drive to make a change and then meet the needs of their community. So here is where I learned that I wanted to work for peace. When I heard Messengers of Peace, I thought, yes, I'm working for human rights, but peace was making much more sense for me. So this is where I started. And working with young people was very, very inspiring and very powerful. So I just wanted to continue doing this and supporting the leadership of young people. And then as a 19-year-old, I was invited to attend a youth forum in the United Nations. So now it was for real. It was not just playing the United Nations in a school. And when I got into the General Assembly room, I had to take a moment to take a breath, because I realized that being in a position of influence, we can say, and fulfilling my dreams carried a great responsibility. So this was another turning point. And then I met the Satyagraha Institute, which is where I am the director now. And I was invited to apply to this international course in the Gujarat Vidyapith University. And this is where I learned about Gandhi and most importantly about his contributions to world peace. And I found here a great space to put together non-violence and leadership as a way to build peace. So this is where everything clicked together for me. And now what I hope for the future is to have many more opportunities to work together with leaders around the world and have many more turning points to inspire my work for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. In my own life, I've done model UN for 10 years. And I think that once you have a turning point, then other points are more like stepping stones. It's on the same path, actually. Thank you. Now we will like to invite Mr. Nicholas Thompson to answer the same question.
Thank you very much, Devesh. I grew up, I've heard the turning points for a lot of you, and one of them that really resonated for me was Simon's, and just that early childhood experience really shaped, I suppose, the rest of your life. I grew up in a very rural community in Trinidad and Tobago, experiencing a lot of racism as a child of mixed race. And those years really, when I look back at it now, represented a defining moment in my journey, and which really ignited a spirit to fight injustice and inequity. And I don't think that there was, one turning point in my journey toward nonviolence. There are probably many, but my journey began at a very young age. And I remember one day my mother, she was checking my school bag. I was probably about 6 years old. She was checking my school bag to ensure that it didn't have anything inappropriate in it. And I took a stand telling her that children have rights. Well, let's just say that didn't end very well for me, but you get the gist. The spirit was there, but probably misguided. But but seriously, at a young age, I recognized that there's a strong, pursuit in me to fight for these for injustices, and that needed a lot of guidance. I recall in high school, I led a peaceful protest when I saw teachers abusing the school feeding program, which essentially left students without food that the government was providing. They called in my mother and they said, well, it's not that Nicholas is he did anything wrong, but he's making the teachers anxious with all these protests and whatnot, right? Later on in my life, I challenged the government of Trinidad, calling for the resignation of a government minister who misappropriated hundreds of millions of dollars. That effort went viral, leading to others to call for the minister's resignation. And just about 7 days later, the minister resigned. And what this really taught me was that it only takes one actor to start a movement. It only takes one match to light a fire. And that represented one of the really defining moments in my journey towards nonviolence. And as I sat and I reflected on that journey, it really empowered me, because I'm like, when I first heard about what was happening with the misappropriation of funds, I'm like, well, how come nobody is standing up? How come nobody's saying anything? And I suppose sometimes we're always looking for someone else to act before we do. And oftentimes that allows, injustices to continue, because everyone is waiting for somebody else to act. And that really led me to the next, as Devesh put it, stepping stone, right? So you see one door is, one turning point is leading to another, to another, to another. And that really gave me the courage and confidence to know that I'm only one person, but I can make a difference. And next, I led thousands of workers in Canada to file the landmark Black class action lawsuit against the government of Canada for systemic discrimination of tens of thousands of workers. Again, highlighting that it just takes one person, and that person is you, and wherever you are joining us from today. So don't look to anyone else. You have that within you already. And as Dr. Mack said earlier, the power of nonviolence has more power than, or more force than the power of violence. And the power resides with the people. So those are just some of the turning points that were instrumental in my life advocating for the elimination of racism and discrimination in society.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, for the insight into your own life and your own journey. Now we will be moving ahead and we'll be asking one follow-up question to all the participants on the insights which they have given from their own journeys. If anyone has a question from our speakers, then please write the question for the speaker who is speaking then on the chat box. First of all, our first question is for Miss Andrea. And the question is, Andrea, if you could talk about the challenges which you have faced when mobilizing people, both young and old generation, on the path of peace and nonviolence, and how do you respond to those challenges?
Okay, I have 4. I will say the 4 and then I will explain. Professionalization, strategy, intergenerational dialogue, and opportunities to take the lead. And I will elaborate. When I talk about professionalization as a challenge when mobilizing people, and I was thinking more young people because this is what the forum is focusing a bit more on. I see that professionalization is a challenge, not only for young people, but in general in civil society, in the sense that the impact is often limited by the lack of tools in the sector or with the people in the sector. And we need spaces like this one to equip ourselves for the struggles ahead. But there are many more examples of what we can do to help make our work more serious and more solid. Secondly, I want to talk about strategy, and this was mentioned before, how important strategy is in nonviolence. And I think that it's something that we often miss because we wish to get speedy results. So we so much need leaders who are willing to plan for the long term and commit to the means while walking the path towards the ends. This doesn't happen always. So we do need the people who are persistent and who have a plan for the long term and how we want to achieve our goals. The next one is intergenerational dialogue. And I believe it's the only way to move forward as a society. Young people should not act as an isolated group. Of course, sometimes we can, if it makes sense. But we are not in a world of different boxes that are isolated. Let's remember interdependency. So we should act together. We should have conversations to talk about the different subjects that are important in our societies. And we should not forget that we are one. And there is so much that we can learn from each other if we are ready and open to do so. And the last one, and for me is one of the most important ones, is to have opportunities to take the lead. This for me is pivotal. And I want to focus on young people here. I worked in several countries, and I've seen many countries where young people are not allowed structurally to take the lead or to be in positions of power. And for me, this is alarming. Young people have much to offer, And this needs to be recognized by our societies and structures. So we both, young and older people, play a role in this. So on the other hand, when I've seen countries where youth has a place and where their drive and capacity are encouraged, these countries are ones that foster involvement in the development of communities. So last thing I want to say is that we as young people can start by raising our voice, building networks, as it was said at the beginning, how important it is to have a community. And we, young or older, share responsibility for our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Our next question is to Mr. Simon. Simon, can you tell us more about the peaceful civil resistance you were talking about? And how does this resistance bring an end to the conflict? And could you also talk about how this resistance remains peaceful?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. I also want to talk about, like, as you said, how peaceful civil resistance. When you read The Politics of Nonviolent Action by Gene Sharp, he calls it a technique designed to operate against opponents who are able and willing to use violent sanctions or actions. So it should really be understood, it should be evaluated, it should really be applied most effectively. As Dr. Carson says that civil resistance itself may not be enough, I agree with him, because when you do not organize, when you do not constantly evaluate, when you do not constantly kind of do what Dr. Leicester talks about when he's kind of summarizing the work of Gandhi, organizing, listening, analysis, mobilizing. I think these are very important things to help us to sustain a peaceful resistance. And this is what it actually means. Violence and violence against violence is reinforcing. When you decide to fight violence against violence, you're going to find a challenge. Violent action and non-violent action possess quite different mechanisms. And I want to share what, when Gandhi was comparing the two situations, Gandhi says that a man who violently strikes water with a sword, it's the man's arm which will be dislocated. Because when you constantly strike water using a sword, I mean, you're not cutting anything, but at the end of the day, it's your hand that is going to actually be dislocated. So you're going to find a problem with that. So peaceful civil resistance ends conflict when we mobilize people, when we organize, when we strategize, and we carry out a sequence of actions. And it can only remain peaceful when we constantly evaluate our struggle and actions. It is important to keep evaluating what we've done and how we've gone wrong. We also need to keep practicing the values of nonviolent discipline, solidarity, and this can be achieved in the long run and constantly through practicing it. You realize that values become part of us when we practice them, and when you practice them, they become our behaviors. So that's like very, very important. The second idea, the other idea of how civil resistance may remain peaceful is the state has a tendency of planting what we call provocateurs, or we call them state agents in our movements, especially in civil resistance movement that use peaceful, nonviolent action as their method. So these provocateurs work hard to disunite, to bring disunity and scandals. they disrupt effective strategic thinking, they lower participation, and they promote or engage in vandalism and violence that can be blamed on the movement. They want to paint a bad image on a movement that has chosen nonviolent actions because they want to disunite it. But as Eric Chanworth says in a book called Civil Resistance, that what everyone should know, that the ultimate aim of these agents is to banish public sympathy and support for the movement while giving government justification for heavy-handed tactics such as beating, mass arrests, coercions, intimidations, because the state wants to find an entry point on how to kind of destroy this movement. So it's important as movement leaders, as leaders of movements, organizers, reformers, rebels, as Bill Moyer says it in the Movement Action Plan, when he talks about the structure of leadership in a movement, that we kind of look at these things and take control of them so that we are able to kind of desist from these things. So I want to tell you that civil resistance can end conflict, a lot of conflict, when one, we maintain strong, cohesive, and decentralized network or membership. I want to agree with Dr. Carson and also Andrea said, we need to build networks. These movements survive on networks and numbers. Yeah, an interesting scenario is when Dr. Carson also went to a meeting and phoned 6 people and was asking themselves that, oh, are we able to change this kind of regime or to achieve the change we want? That exactly is the question that we ask ourselves, that it starts with me, keeping these values, organizing, changing, and then you keep attracting people to join your movement. If at all the movement cannot exercise some of these values of nonviolent discipline, of solidarity, of self-determination towards achieving a certain goal, I think it may be hard for it to achieve the kind of change that they need. So it's important for us to focus on these things as we use civil resistance and it to remain peaceful. Thank you very much. That's what I can contribute.
Thank you, Simon, for your insight. And at a personal level, I completely agree with you. And I also see that it's the means which determines the ends. While Dr. Carlson and Johnny Maxwell were talking about the greater harm, sometimes it's our measure to see that till this point of time the harm is done. But usually this violence of cause becomes the effect, and the effect becomes the cause. So at some point of time, we need to stop and step aside. So that's what I have come to see. And I completely agree that there can be a means to be peaceful. Thank you. Now, our next question is to Jin. Jin, you spoke about climate change, and we'd like to know as to how do you think climate change is affecting the world peace? And what are some steps you think youth can take to overcome the challenge?
Okay, thanks so much. I was joined to some similar organizations for the addressing climate change, and that time, youth has to use also the side, both sides, like the youth side and any other the civil society side, necessary to update to the protection for the to leading to the global peace. Likewise, to the as you know, to the likewise as you know, the Russia had already invaded the Ukraine, and also some of the some kind of some military conflict around the world still happen, likewise India and Pakistan and some other countries as well. That time, the climate change has to consider and approach to any other side of the consideration about the global peace, for the energy security, and the national securities, and so on, especially for the protecting to the industries as well. So this time, as a youth can develop the voice, not only for the enhancing to the energy transition, or try to reduce to the amount of the greenhouse gas emissions or so on, but also the need to deliver to some countermeasures with developing to the own technologies. Likewise, now recently some of the several companies, kind of some startup companies, use managed by the youth, so established into the China's, US, and Europe, and any other countries, strongly focus on about the transformation of the energy sectors and climate sectors as well, and they willing to sell into the making some collaborations. I mean, as a business partner with any other huge companies. So that's right. I think the youth have to transform or specialize to each topics, like with capacity buildings, developing technologies, and protect human rights, and focus on the education and so on. So youth have to equip to some specializations or some specialized knowledge, technology, and so on. Whereas looking to the climate change as a global piece for the company side or government side, nowadays, just until 2030, we need to reach to the Paris Agreement. But it's to reach at the Paris Agreement, we need the three elements: the laws, finance, and capacity building. Capacity building, we had to be catching up to the many companies, and so we had to the youth and the company had to be catching up to as the company side, and the jobs and working as a digital transformation, and try to reach at SDGs as well. Whereas as a business side, just update to the latest data of the IPCC reports mentioned about this, just only the 11% of the finance can be provided for the companies, and we still need to the more than 40% of the finance. I mean that it's more than 4,000 million US dollars necessary to invest in the climate change, but still we cannot reach it. So that time we need to consider about how can we make the systems to accelerate to the more investigations, and try to investment to the more these kind of technology and capacity buildings, and make some collaboration with companies. So that's a point to the necessity for to getting more inclusions and cross-border to the actions for the climate change. Also, for the looking to the violence, likewise the climate change is strongly it's hard to look into the actual impact. Likewise, just we can feel it, like in the summer seasons we can see the many flows and
hello niggers, hello all niggers, 1 2 3
okay.
Niggers, don't mute me. And Asian niggers and Asian niggers. Hey niggers.
Okay, thanks. And
oh no, those aren't good words.
It's fine. And also recently in the Asia Pacific countries, there's a huge drought and fraud, and it's strongly damage to the finance, but still we could not getting any of the damage of the finance and our life, daily life. So that time we need to looking up to some of the report. We need to looking up to any of the news and some of the damage and what's the effect to our research and our industry and our life. So many civil citizens and the civil societies need to focus on getting more expanded the information network to know about what's going to be happen and what's the effect to our daily life based on the climate change and based on the global impact need to be considered about it. And lastly, based on I working to several years for the working to some climate issues agencies, and that time many of the youth, likewise the last years I was attending COP26, and also this year I was attending the SP56. We have some huge potential for the takes actions, invest, and some of the crossing the borders, which makes a collaboration to create a new values against the climate issues. So that time each members can get and can consider to attack and to reach out to the more step forward to consider about the climate issues for the contributing to the global peace. So that's my brief point. Sorry for any inconvenience.
Thank you so much, Jen, for the insight and talking about the actions which both can be taken at a societal level and at an individual level by a youth. Thank you so much, Jen. Our next question is from Nicholas. And Nicholas, the question has two parts. The first one is, for people identifying with sections that are considered to be minorities who are facing injustice, do you believe that there is a way out of systematic oppression which could lead to a total change? It's the first question. If you want to answer this now, you can, and then we can move on to the second part of the question.
Sorry, you'd have to give me a minute. The comments made during the last presenter is very distressing to me. So you'd have to give me a minute or two.
Please take your time. And at the same time, we would first of all like to apologize for the actions of the person who had joined the call. And secondly, I've learned for myself at least to not identify with such words and do not let that knowledge come into the mind of the people, though it's really hurtful. But at the same time, I request people to not identify with such comments and let it enter your psyche. Thank you so much. And I appreciate how Jin took it on himself by just simply ignoring and moving forward. Thank you, Jin. Yes, Nicholas, you're on mute, sir.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
The first part, and if you could tell me the second part too.
All right, yeah. For people identifying with sections that are considered to be minorities who are facing injustice, do you believe that there is a way out of systematic oppression which could lead to a total change? That's the first part of the question. Second question is, do you believe that till there are separate identifications with religion, ideas, ethnic backgrounds, nationality, color, causes, this division and conflict could end?
All right, so thank you. So the first part of that question, as it relates to a pathway forward for racialized people who are facing injustice, I think Dr. Johnny Mack answered that very eloquently earlier on when he said, there's the power resides with the people. The challenge is we're not owning that power base. We're highly divided on that power base and finding the common theme of recognizing if one of us is injured, then all of us are impacted by that. So I think the answer to that question is that if as a group, as a large group who are facing different injustices in different directions, but if we all stand together as a people, that would certainly help to address those injustices. Because let's talk about this for a second. If we're looking at one group that's impacted, if none of the other groups get involved, that's not my fight, I'm supporting from a distance, then those injustices are likely to continue. But if all of the groups get involved, then certainly the powers that be would have to listen, because there's that unified voice. And so for any group, if we all stand together on the issues impacting that group, there's a collaborative and collective effort that would certainly help on that. And on the second part of that question, Devesh, you'll have to help me with that second question again.
Yes, sir. My question was that Do you believe, apologies. Yes, do you believe that there is, do you believe that till there are separate identifications with religions, ideas, ethnic backgrounds, nationality, color, or any cause, the division and conflict could end?
Well, certainly the idea of religion and different religions have certainly divided us on all of these issues. Significantly, it has been used over generations, perhaps centuries, to divide us as a people. And I think if you remove that that common factor, it would perhaps bring us together on all of these common issues. And religion is such a sensitive issue, and it's so personal that it causes that effect on people. And it really, in my view, at least in my humble view, serves as a barrier in terms of bringing all of us together on common issues.
And if you will also like to talk about, just very quickly, like religion, similarly, when we talk about different races, different groups, different identities, it is still forming a group, and then comes division. So do you think that that can lead to this conflict can never end till there are identifications to different groups?
Well, it's interesting, and I think, Devesh, we have to start seeing each other as human beings, like the human race, right? And not as black or white or Asian, or we have to start seeing each other as human beings. I'm almost certain of this, that if you cut myself or you cut you, Andrea, Simon, Jin, one color of blood is going to come out. Anybody dispute that? Nobody's disputing that, right? And that is the fact that below our skin, we're all carrying the same blood, right? And that's red. So we have to start, and I think if I understand this correctly, from a child, we're taught these biases. From a child growing up, you're taught which is better, and yours is better. And perhaps everyone is guilty of that, have preconceived notions about a certain group of people. And you internalize that growing up, and it becomes quite very much normal. So we have to retrain our minds, because you were trained into thinking a certain way. So we have to reverse that thinking and view everyone as human beings. And I think that's where we'll start making progress. Rather than viewing someone as a different race, view them as a human being.
Thank you, Nicholas. With this, we have come to the end of questions from our end. If there are any questions now from the audience, please, you can write your questions on the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we can recognize the people to ask the questions. Okay, so Jen, do you have a question?
Yes, it's fine. Yes, I have. Just I have to leave the comment. And thank you, Nicholas. It's a great. That's your point is so great to consider about the mutual understanding. Even the human rights and protection for the violence and the focus on the climate change and any other topics, we need to get a mutual understanding. Just I like to say, and mutual understanding, and try to cross the borders for the understanding each other's. Like the focus on the characteristic of each other's place, and also the focus on to the areas. What we can do, what is the task, what is the issues, and we need to consider about their background. Even someone says say something not good, but even so, maybe we need to step forward. We need to include it, and we need to accept it, the personality. So that's my comment. Thanks. Sorry for the some distributions.
Thank you, Jen. We have Keshav has raised his hand. Keshav, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. I actually want to ask all our panelists, we are like who are coming in from different parts of the world with your own respective contexts. How can other young people from different parts, like all of us, unite together to create a global movement? While we create a global movement, also to provide some support to our local movements from sitting from wherever we are sitting in different parts of the world. So if I want to support Simon or Andrea, or if Ganga wants to support me in India, what are the two or one basic advice that you can give from your end? Anyone can take the question from the panel or multiple speakers. Thank you.
I think I can say something, if that's okay.
Yes, Simon.
I think all initiatives to build like a youth movement, a young people movement, I think it's important for us to also look at one, inspiration. There is need for inspiration for young youth to care, to see that they should belong here. And I think inspiration can only come through the available content, the documentaries. I was happy when we had a rap song from that was presented by Dr. Who presented. So it's important that we have inspiration, because youth nowadays look at, oh, am I inspired to act? Am I inspired to join this? Then as we inspire them, it's important to also think about number two, capacity building, knowledge building, skill building. I think this is really going to be, and I think Jean talked about a lot in capacity building. So it's important that we keep building their capacity. One, to increase, to build their resilience, their spirit, their love, and all that. And then the last thing, because we believe that this is issues that affect Andrea may affect me, issues that affect Nicholas may affect me. We all face similar issues. So we need to build solidarity among ourselves, solidarity among movements, solidarity among networks, among countries, so that we can learn the best practices. And also, when an issue happens to a friend, let's say Nicholas, I can write a statement, I can write a Twitter, I can do a campaign about it, just that I am in support of them. So those are my kind of things. So I summarize it as inspiration. Without inspiration, people remain idle. And without education, people may use non-effective means like violence. So we need to also educate people, and then later we need to have action, because without actions, nothing would really change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Nicholas?
Sure, thank you. I want to echo some of the sentiments made by Simon there. This forum and not only the working group, but the World House Project presents a phenomenal forum for us to change the world before us today. And I don't say so very lightly, because we have on this forum people, young people from around the world. Now, as Simon pointed out there, how powerful would that be if one of us is fighting for a challenge in their country, and you have organizations from around the world issuing statements of support, letting the relevant stakeholders and those in authority know that there's global support for this issue. There's one thing that governments do not like, and that goes to every country, is that people from other country telling them or condemning the actions in their country. And that's where we can work together to bring about whatever changes that we're seeking wherever we are, in whatever part of the world. So I'd like to suggest for those of you who are new or here for the first time, that you get involved with the World House Project, and let's find ways to collaborate, to, as Simon put it, support each other wherever we are. It's a very important question, and the answer is right before us. You'll find it very useful and helpful to be able to engage in one place with people from around the world, working together.
Thank you, Nicholas. Andrea?
Yes, thank you. I think it's a very difficult question, how we can create a global movement. It's really, it's a big challenge. But I think we have many tools that can allow us to do that. I think simply considering social media and what we can do with it. Let's just think in practical terms. And in this sense, I would like to mention about there's this new book, Nonviolent Civil Resistant Tactics in the 21st Century, something like this it's called. It was also promoted by David Hart, who is here. And well, we basically can call it Nonviolent Tactics. And it's a list of hundreds of ideas of things we can do to get together and create positive social change. So this is just one practical thing. I can probably share it in the chat. And how can we add value to each other's movements? I think the first step is to identify what our talents and our passions are, so we know what we can offer to the world. So I'll just leave it like that.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Jen?
Okay, based on the answer to the questions, I would say maybe even whatever happened, like even these kinds of situation, how hard the situation faced, the youth cannot stop. Youth can step forward, and then also at least we can see many other persons here, and we can see the many other members hearing our voices from around the world, and we also can expand our movement. So that time, I like to say, well, we can change the world. We can change with any violence. We can change any damage. We can change any other the movement, and we can create the new value as looking like to the Mahatma Gandhi, and then we can do it. We can do the looking forward, and here we can get united and take solidarities and actions for the accessing all the issues around the world. So then, from here, we can start for the human rights. Well, we can start for the non-violence. That's an answer for my comment. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jen. Now I would like to invite Dr. Johnny Mack to give his remarks.
Well, thank you, Devesh, and thanks to each of the panelists. You are incredibly inspiring. When I'm a bit envious of you. When I was your age, we didn't have the access that you have. And Dr. Carson mentioned that in his opening remarks. We had very primitive, as we say it, tools. We didn't even have cell phones. We had desk stationary phones. But you today have so much access. But what's more inspiring than that is your use of the access. And that's what I'm really hearing in this panel. Each of you in your own way are incredibly engaged and incredibly aware, and you represent a leadership that perhaps you haven't yourselves fully understood and embraced. But I am so encouraged by what I hear from you, Nicholas, and you, Andrea, and you, Jen, and you, Simon, and all of you. I think joining the World House Project, creating your own networks, is the key here, and I hear that in your own presentations. And so, thank you